Mr. Champlin, I just, to begin with, I want to just thank you again for doing this. And
Sure.
thank you. And I'm curious, where were you born and raised?
Hammondsport, New York, a little town in the west part of New York State.
Yes.
Population about 1,200, I guess.
Yes.
Something like that.
And I understand your family was sort of in the wine business?
Yes, my father was president of the Pleasant Valley Wine Company, and my mother was active in the winery as well.
Mm-hmm.
So on. So I have a wine background.
Now, growing up, were the movies a big part of your life?
Well, yes. I caught on early that movies were going to be part of my life, and then I just moved along.
Yeah.
Caught up with them. Yeah.
Do you remember from your childhood any particular favorite movies or movie stars or anything to do with that?
No, I just sort of incorporated everything. I just
Now, you went off to Harvard, right?
yes.
And then that was interrupted by the war?
Yeah.
And I know this is not specifically to do with film, but my understanding from everything I've read is that you served very heroically there, and I just wonder how you feel that time in your life perhaps shaped you for the stuff you would do later on. Do you think it had a lot to do with...
Well, I don't know. I early on learned to be reactive to my surroundings,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and I think I was just lucky that my surroundings were very stimulating.
Yeah.
And so that I learned by living, you might say.
Mm-hmm. Now, when you came back, you finished at Harvard, and then so you continued. Then, what do you remember? What you hoped to do after graduating? Was film criticism
really,
even on the horizon?
No, I really hadn't. I didn't know what choices I had,
Mm-hmm.
really. No, but I just knew that I hadn't done with writing,
Mm-hmm.
and so I knew I had miles to go down that path. But
Mm-hmm. You've been an English major, right?
yeah.
So you must have been a talented writer, I imagine.
Well, I don't know. I was a writer.
Yeah.
This is all I've ever done.
Yeah.
And I was delighted to have a chance to be a writer, you know.
Yep.
I was very lucky. And I had very good mentors.
Yeah.
Advisors, I guess.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Now, how did you wind up at Life?
I damned if I know. I really don't know.
Well, you said your writing professor at Harvard knew somebody at Life.
Yeah, I think that was. I was taking a writing course. I always wanted to be a writer. Never wanted to do anything else. And I had various instructors and so on, and they just steered me along the way into writing, and I've been there ever since.
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I've read that when you started at Life, there was sort of that 6-month training period where you had to do less glamorous things, right?
Well, I guess there was. Yeah, you always had to start off slowly, I guess, and learn your way along and learn to
Sorting pictures and stuff.
Yeah, sorted pictures for a long time. Yeah. Very good training. God, you can't get along in life unless you know pictures very well.
Right.
So I was very lucky in that sense that I had a long, nice picture apprenticeship at Life.
Yes. And then I guess they felt that New York was where you would be sort of best used for a while.
I guess so. I don't know who made the decision I'm not sure about even now. I don't know, but I just the certain inevitability about going to work in life in New York.
Yep.
I wouldn't have been on getting it for myself, but yet it came upon me, and it was a wonderful opportunity.
You said your writing teacher that you took
Yeah.
course from at Harvard knew somebody in life.
Yeah.
That they were looking for somebody.
Well, that's right. Yeah, it's all connections, I guess.
Sure. But you earned your place there, and I guess there were a number of things that you were covering at that point. In the 50s, would it include a lot of politics too, right?
Yeah, a little bit of everything. I was, yes, very much. I was interested in politics, politicians,
Yep.
and sure, yeah.
Because one of the things I remember seeing that you'd covered was the 1956 political convention. I guess that must have probably with Eisenhower, right? If it's 56, I think.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, and who did he run against? I'm forgetting, but it must have been not a big deal. But so now were life and time the same place, or did you go from life to time?
Well, they're in the same place in the Rockefeller Center, right? In the center of Rockefeller Center. And so I was always right there. But sort of early on opted for life, I guess. The picture aspect of life. It is me always in the beginning. And I was so glad to be able to be thrust into the picture world, I guess.
Yeah.
I think it was the luckiest thing in my life was I came to look at pictures, love pictures, deal with them, and so on and so forth. It was just a lucky break.
Now, because was I guess the real start of your association with movies would have been when you asked. Would it be when you asked Time if you could go from New York to Los Angeles? You just were tired of being in New York?
I don't remember ever being tired of being in New York, but I did require a move to the West Coast to the life because it seemed to me as things were even more vital out there. You were closer to the real truth, I think. Yeah.
And then when you got out here, I guess that's when Otis Chandler had just taken over at the LA Times. Is that right?
I think it was, shortly thereafter.
He came to the Bureau for Life first.
Uh-huh.
And then went to London with Life and Time. And then he was asked to come back and work for the LA Times.
That's right. And the time in London, that was interesting because I guess for Time in Life, you had been asked to do a few interviews here with Aldous Huxley, Christopher Isherwood, people like that, and they felt that you were a good fit for London.
I don't know who decided that, but I was glad they did because I was wonderful. London was a perfect place for me. I loved that. I could have lived there forever. It's just wonderful, yeah.
And that was an exciting time to be there. I guess they now call it the swinging 60s, right, in London.
That's right. I was right in the middle of it. It was just wonderful. I could hardly keep my feet on the ground. You know, it was so exciting, but yeah.
And who were some of the folks that you encountered there? Because I know you interviewed a lot of the big ones.
I can't tell you. I really can't tell you, but there were many.
Yep. I will just mention that I've seen that you Julie Christie and Tony Richardson and David Lean were some of them, but the one that I think is the most interesting in a way was that you spotted this little band called the Beatles before other people took them seriously, right?
Yeah, that was quite an accident, but the happiest accident in my life, yes. The Beatles were just wonderful stuff.
Now, you must have just been in Liverpool and seen them, or how did you first hear about them?
I don't remember. Honest to God, I can't tell you. I remember they were just in the world.
Yeah, in the scene out there.
on the scene.
And you told.
And but I gravitated to them instantly, and I just loved it, and never regretted a minute of my association with the those people. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do know the telegram that you sent was urging the I guess Time to cover them.
Yeah.
And the reply. Do you remember what they said in reply?
I think it was Time bypassing something.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Time passing on obscure Liverpool group.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well, you showed them. So now, what brought about the decision when you to go from? I guess you came back to Los Angeles, still with Life, and then how did you end up at the LA Times?
No.
Is that wrong?
No. He was in London when somebody said there was an opening in the LA Times.
Oh.
Isn't that it, Chuck?
Yeah.
One of your friends in LA.
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. I remember who it was.
So you
Would
came.
you be interested in coming back and writing for the LA Times?
Yeah.
Okay, so you came back to write for the LA Times specifically, and
a notable choice, I guess. Yes.
yeah, and
Can't be anything else ever happening.
Well, they were starting a new calendar section, weren't they?
that was the beginning of the calendar section.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you came, was the original position? It was entertainment editor.
Yeah.
And that was something that you did for 15 years, I believe. And but I know it was 2 years into that 15 years that the principal film critic position sort of came up for discussion, and that was not something you were particularly interested in pursuing.
Yeah, I have no sharp memory of that period. It just seemed to me that I was a perfect match for that position.
Yeah.
But I don't know why I thought so, but I was. God.
I had read, was there somebody named Arthur Knight who you had originally encouraged to do the job instead of you?
Yes, well, he was senior to me. Mm-hmm. He was a senior editor at Time and Life, and yes, then when the position opened, he just pointed to me and said, "Go for it."
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Interesting.
I couldn't have told.
Wasn't at Time, I don't think.
Or maybe at the time, or he was somewhere. Right. It said
I couldn't tell you why it happened, or how it happened, but it was just perfect. It was perfect timing of me and the position.
Yes.
We just like that.
Absolutely.
It was wonderful. Yeah.
And now, I guess the Times had, and I believe still has, a policy that they will review every film that gets a proper release. Now, at the time, that the exception were lecture films and sort of adult films, but you had to see probably a few hundred movies a year. And I wonder, and also obviously write about them.
Yeah.
That must be
I don't know how many I saw a year. I have no idea. I never count.
Yeah.
Count, you know. But it was just a paradise because I loved the movies. Mm-hmm. I loved writing about the movies. I loved the content of the movies and so on. It was just an ideal situation. It's like being thrown into a pile of sugar candy, I guess, if you have a sweet tooth.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah.
And did you ever find a lot of writers, they get writer's block or they struggle, they need breaks? I mean, you don't get that luxury when you're a film critic because you have to be churning out content all the time. Did you find it easy?
It was never presented like it was a problem. It was always just, God, I'll take everything I can get, throw it at me, and I'll handle it.
Yeah.
You know, just wonderful. I was an insatiable appetite for the movies. I guess I still do, as a matter of fact. Yeah.
Yes, and now I wonder. Everybody has their preferences of what kinds of movies they like more than others. But as a critic, you have to sort of treat all movies fairly. What was the trick to doing that? I mean, if you have to go one day and review a John Wayne movie and the next day review a Disney movie, that Do you approach them with the same sort of criteria that you're looking at?
Well, I think that's the name of the game, the shifting target every day was a different target, different kind of movie, different movie personnel, and so on and so forth. So there's just insatiable appetite meets insatiable demand, you might say. So I just never wanted for anything to write about. You know, I was always there.
Yeah.
Ahead of you, like that.
Do you have a type of movie that you like generally more than others? That you're predisposed to sort of enjoy more than others?
Well, I never thought about it. I think that the great thing about movies is their freshness. The appetite the movies have for the movies is insatiable, and they pass it along to you, and you've got to run hard to keep up with the stuff that's being thrown your way. It's lovely. It's you can have an insatiable appetite and still not be sated. You know, it's a wonderful appetite.
Now, do you remember at the LA Times at the time that you were starting out there? Were there other writers or editors that you particularly enjoyed working with and getting to know?
Oh, it's funny, Terrell. I think back, and it's hard to know. It was just a fertile time. You know, just everything. The editors that life showed up, threw up, I should say, every week. You know, it was just amazing. The richness of life in those days and time of life, both, it was amazing stuff. You just could not absorb all the material that was coming your way, so you just grabbed what you could, just held on to it as long as you could.
And the same at the Times, at the LA Times.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah. Same process all the way.
Yeah.
Art Seidenbaum was your best friend, of course.
Yeah.
Who's that? Art Sandbaum?
Art Seidenbaum.
Art Seidenbaum, yeah.
Was my colleague and.
But he didn't work in the entertainment section.
Yeah. But he was my closest friend at the time, and my guide, I guess, to the wilds of Time Incorporated. Yeah.
Now, I just was curious because this is an area that's of particular interest to me and what I do at the Hollywood Reporter. Yeah. Was the Academy Awards something that you would cover and go to?
Yes, I did. Yeah, but I don't have any particular memories of it. I guess it was just part of my chore. You know, on my plate every week or whatever it was. Yeah, sure.
And would you find that to be exciting, or was that just another thing to do?
Oh, no. It was always terribly exciting because the movies were just grabbing everything in sight, you know, processing it and sending it out to the world. And I just loved the insatiable appetite for the movies was wonderful. You know, it was just great, lovely.
Now, I wonder when it's tough enough to be a film critic anywhere, but to be the film critic in the company's town, you know, here in Hollywood.
Yeah.
I imagine that you probably interacted and saw people and got to know people who you had to write about. And I wonder, is that tough to do?
Well, I suppose it was, yes. The people I dealt with were very challenging. You know, I wrote about them, and I knew them, and I walked with them and talked with them, and so on and so forth. So, but it was an exciting time. You know, I can't think of any comparable image that would just fit what it was like. But it was just, you were jumped into a whole pile of I should say, fresh. I don't know.
No, well, I can imagine. One of the people that I believe that you, in terms of one of the actors who I believe that you became certainly pen pals in a way with, but friendly also, was Charlton Heston, right?
Yes, yeah.
And I think that start because he maybe wanted to counter an argument that you'd made in a review, and you guys enjoyed challenging each other, from what I've read.
Well, that's interesting. I don't remember that at all, but I'll take your word for it, yes.
Well, I believe, I may be wrong, but that's what, and in fact, this interview that you did at the American Film Institute that was one of my references, I believe it was conducted by Charlton Heston. So you and he spoke, and there seemed to be a mutual respect there, because he felt that a lot of critics are not particularly fair, and you felt that a lot of actors have unreasonable expectations.
I suppose both things are true, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Now, I think in that interview, one of the things you talked about was that of all the different interactions with people out here, one of the most memorable was when Katharine Hepburn invited you to come to the set to watch Spencer Tracy film his last scene that he ever shot, and this was during the making of Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Yeah.
And do you remember that? I gather it was a pretty emotional day there.
Well, it was, because Heston was already a legend in his own time.
Or Tracy, you mean?
Tracy.
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
And God, it was just, it was just magic. It was like being, I don't know, introduced to the prophet Jehovah.
Yeah.
I don't know who it was, but yeah, sure, he was just wonderful. God.
And supposedly what happened on that day, he was talking about, I think, the relationship between his daughter and the character she was going to be marrying, or maybe it was his relationship with his wife's character. But really, what people, including you, seemed to feel was that he was really talking about his relationship with Hepburn, and so it made it more powerful.
Yeah.
But
I don't remember that specifically, but certainly his relationship with Hepburn was classic.
Yeah.
So basic and fundamental, and purity.
Yeah.
Well,
And now, one of the things that you helped to start was, and that continues to this day, and maybe one of these days I'll become a part of it, is the Los Angeles Film Critics Association. Do you remember, I guess you were one of the founders?
Yeah, it's funny. I guess I was, but I don't remember. Oddly enough, the thing is shrouded in the ale founded in time.
Yeah, no, it's not I'm sure it was just another thing at the time, but I mean, it raises the question to me. Do you recall who the other big film critics out here in LA were when you were working? Because there must have been at Variety and the Hollywood Reporter and maybe the Associated Press. They must have each had somebody who was sort of you, but for them.
I should remember them all and write about them all. I can't do it.
Was one of them. Wasn't he one of the?
Who's that? Arthur Knight.
Arthur Knight, one
Yeah.
of the principal critics.
Yeah, he was a senior critic, I say.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, and he was a mentor to me, and fine, balanced critic, excellent. One of my models to aim for. Yeah.
And I believe that another person who, I don't think he was a critic, but certainly a reporter out here who's also still in the area is Bob Thomas. Did you guys know each other?
Sure, I knew Bob. He was one of the, the Iron Men of reporting, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over at the AP.
Yeah. He was an early friend and continued one forever. Yeah.
Yeah.
He was wonderful. Yeah.
Now, how did you begin working in television? Not many film critics get that opportunity. I think your first show was Film Odyssey on PBS in starting in 1971. And that's where, if I remember correctly, you were introducing classic movies to audiences who probably hadn't seen them before.
Well, that's right. That was, I don't know why I had that job, but I got it, and I did it, and I loved it, and I think I had an influence on the show. But I can't claim any special magic.
No, well, that's okay. And I know that...
Except that it's challenging, I tried to meet the challenge, I guess, all I can say.
Absolutely. And you know what's fun is that on the internet today, there are clips of many of the interviews that you did in conjunction with the show, so people still watch the interviews.
Good.
Absolutely.
Well, that's great.
And there's Film Odyssey, and then he did a series called Champlin on Film.
Absolutely. And of course, I know that one of them that was very influential was on the Z channel. I think it was called On the Film Scene. And you did a lot of interviews for that, including, my understanding now, again, because a lot of my focus is on Oscar history and the Oscars and all of that, that was one of the first sort of must-do stops on the Oscar campaign trail. If somebody wanted an Oscar, they were smart to come and talk to you first, right?
I don't know if that's true, but I think it probably was, because I had access to the Oscars and knew how important they were.
Yep.
And so I tried to live up to them as best I could.
Sure.
Yeah.
And one of them I just remember recently seeing in preparation for an interview that I was doing, so this would be 24, 25 years later, was with Daniel Day-Lewis. You did an interview with him when he first sort of crossed the radar with everybody on My Left Foot.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, when I had to prepare for my own interview, I said I've got to go back and watch Charles Champlin's interview with him because that was better than anything I could do.
Well,
so that was fun.
I didn't know you could get access
Oh,
to this
sure,
thing.
on YouTube it's called, and it's really I'll show you afterwards. But now one of the things you said to in front of the AFI students was that you had, well, let me quote you. In terms of older movies, quote, I tried to catch up with everything, but confess that when I hosted a show on public television and introduced Potemkin and M and all of those classic films, I was seeing the majority of them for the first time. Now that was, today, movies are so easily available because of the internet and DVD and all of that, but I guess it wouldn't have been easy for film critics to have seen a lot of the classics when you were starting out.
Yeah. Well, I didn't know enough to know what was there to be had, but I fell into it, and found myself dealing with all the things you just talked about, and I feel, I had a wonderful chance to acquire an education while I was learning the trade.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
And that show was that show introducing the older movies to young people, or to all people, but I think it was really important because that was for a lot of people their first introduction to a lot of these classic movies, even if it was also for you, in some cases, certainly for a lot of the viewers.
A lot of it was first for me, and I was just sort of wading through the footage, being very proud to be a president.
Yeah.
Observing it all, yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Now, I wonder if you can talk about something that I wouldn't ask if you hadn't written about it, and I know that it's something that you feel very strongly about, and that's what you've had to go through with your macular degeneration. I know it's a tough thing for anybody, but I imagine for somebody who had a lifetime of watching movies, it must be very frustrating.
Yeah, it is terribly. It was from the beginning, because you have a great visual awareness of everything that goes on the screen. There's more going on the screen than you can ever absorb it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But you just have to fake it
Mm-hmm.
all the way along. But it's true, there's always an abundance of film information coming your way, and
Mm-hmm.
you just got to figure out how to grab it, hang on to it.
Yeah.
Tough to do sometimes.
Well, I have to say, I've read through some of the book that you wrote about that, and I've read what other people have had to say about the way you've dealt with it, and they say it's amazing how you sort of remain so positive. I know with your wife's very integral help, you've really used this as a positive thing to help other people learn how to deal with it.
Well, I don't know. I think I was inventing an art form, you might say.
Mm-hmm.
Film criticism. I don't know. I guess it existed before. Somebody must have done it. But I just picked it up when I came along. And there are lots of people out there, lots of information to absorb and pass on to the public.
Mm-hmm.
But God, it was a wonderful experience.
Well,
I was inventing film criticism as it happened, I guess.
absolutely, in a
That's
way.
the way to say it, yeah.
Certainly, no. I mean, it's definitely been very influential to the point where I know that there are only two film critics who have stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame because they were so influential, and you were the first,
God,
and the second, I think, was Roger Ebert. So
wow,
it's just the two of you.
that's great company, isn't it?
Yeah. And it was too bad that he just passed away. But I mean, the two of you, I think, probably influenced more people with your film criticism than just about anyone of your era.
Well, I think we were inventing an art form that did not exist previously, and so that everything that we did was a first-time event, but some of it stuck. It was wonderful.
Yeah. Well, the last things that I hope I can do is just sort of a fun first thing that comes to your mind. I guess as far as your favorites in a way. So to begin with, I wonder, who do you think, aside from yourself, who would be the greatest film critic? Who do you look at as a great film critic?
I don't study the field very much, I must say. Not out of any selfishness, but just to find out what's out there. I don't know.
Well, there's a lot. I mean,
you're listening to a book, a biography of Pauline Kael at the moment.
Oh yeah.
Didn't you admire her?
Sure. Yes, oh, of course. There's a lot of fine film critics, and I love them all.
Yeah. Now, Pauline Kael was sort of controversial in a way that others were not.
She was outspoken.
Yeah.
Outspoken. That's great. She was uninhibited.
Right.
Outspoken.
Right.
Yeah. Uninhibited.
Absolutely.
Great. Yeah.
Now, the next sort of favorite, as you look back, was there one interview that you did? You did so many. Is there one that sort of stands out as particularly memorable?
I've never thought about it. I don't really know. I just loved all of it. I just plunged into that field and just, God, it was wonderful stuff. There was such much richness in film criticism when I started. I became part of it, but God, it was not all me. There's a lot of people out there doing film criticism and very good film criticism, and I did my best to keep up.
Sure.
Try not to trip and fall if I could avoid it, But yeah, sure, a lot. But there's the fine generation of film critics have come along.
Yeah, now with the film school generation, I guess you've had filmmakers that came through film school, really educated when they came out into the world, but also film journalists.
Yeah.
But the next of these favorites, do you have a favorite movie? This is, I think, something a lot of people would want to know. What would be the movie that you most enjoy watching?
God, oh boy.
You used to tell me Beat the Devil was one.
Beat the Devil?
Yeah.
One of your top favorites.
Certainly.
What's that? Many.
One of the best, yeah.
Okay, and now I guess there's the argument that people have a favorite movie, but they can also sort of say objectively, I think this is another movie is perhaps the greatest movie. A lot of people have over the years said maybe it's Citizen Kane, maybe it's Vertigo, maybe it's Seven Samurai. There's various popular choices. If you had to sort of separate yourself from it and just say, if one movie could be saved, if the world was gonna sort of be go through turmoil, but one movie could be saved, what movie do you think would show the best of movies?
God, what a terrible choice. Yeah, awful. Well, I think any of the early movies in which every movie was a stake in the ground, defining the territory, you might say.
Right.
And I don't know. Probably the earlier movies are the interesting ones because they set the tone, set the turf, set the definition of what movie reviewing could be.
Right. So I guess those would be...
I'm lucky to grew up in a time when film history was being made.
That's right.
I love it. Yeah.
So I guess of those, the early defining ones would have to be some of the D.W. Griffith stuff, The Birth of a Nation, maybe the Chaplin stuff, the stuff probably that was coming out roughly around the time of your own childhood.
I guess so. A little bit later than that, I think, but yeah.
Interesting.
True, a lot of certainly a lot of stuff I saw on the screen.
Yeah. Because
it was happening, I grabbed it. Wonderful.
Yeah.
The early stuff, yeah.
And my last question is, there seems to be today a bigger gulf than ever between what the public likes and what critics like. The public is going for these massive, big-budget blockbusters, the remakes, the sequels, the adaptations. Critics say, come up with something original. Don't do this junk. And really, the only time of year when you get that kind of original stuff, unfortunately, is when people are trying to get nominated for Oscars during the Oscar season at the end of the year. So I wonder what you make of that and what you think the last great movie that you saw might have been.
Well, the last great movie I saw, I can't remember that. That'd be terrible. But I think the great thing is that the movie world is opening up all the time, and more things are coming along that are fine and demanding and probably classic, excellent stuff. And I think the movies are the newest art form, and it's still growing and expanding and deepening. I think deepening is probably a good word, and I think it's wonderful the way things are happening that way. So that we have not yet come to the end of the good the movies can do in the world. I think we're probably a greater film coming along next week than we've ever seen before. But it'll be there next week and the week after that.
And
so it's great, The movies are the youngest art form, I think, and they're still plumbing their own depths, you might say.
Yeah. And it's interesting that every time, I guess, it's sort of like parents and children. Every generation of parents thinks that the next generation of kids is going to ruin the world. It's all over. They're terrible. And somehow life goes on. And with movies, too, I think that it's easy to say, why don't they make them like they used to? But we only remember the great movies. We tend to ignore and forget that there's always been sort of mainly mediocre movies and then a few great movies every year. And it's pretty much the same now, I think, right?
Sure, you've got to have the standard somebody's got to say what a movie is like. The best movies are.
Mhm.
They've already got to be redefined probably by every generation. But they finally do emerge from the shadows, and they're great. You got to do it. Just follow look to the past and then hope for the future, I think.
Right.
Yeah. Sure.
Well, I really appreciate you doing this. This has been fun. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, nice to talk to you. It's fun to talk about the movies. I love them. They've been in my life, you know, and I just can't imagine a better way to spend your life than watching the movies, you know, and watching them grow and deepen.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I wish you well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right.
It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you a lot.
And thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, good. I'm so glad you were able to come out and do this.
There we go.
Good.
Beautiful. Oh,
But all right.
it's great.